Hello, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Well, welcome back. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to do something a little different. I was drawing butterflies the other day, and I did this drawing from a picture I found on the internet, and then I started thinking about doing a painting about it. So I'm going to take you through what I call a little demonstration painting, and it'll take you through all the steps that I do to come up with a design from a picture. And then I'll show you my painting steps, and I'll show you some other techniques that I use along the way. I use three brushes. I use a round and a half inch and a 3/4 inch fat brush. And I'm going to use I'm going to show you something in the background. I wet the paper first, and then I add color on top of that to give me a background. And I think you'll find that interesting. Then I even use some white paint to bring up some highlights on the subject matter. So I will take you through the beginning all the way to the end, and you'll see the final finished painting after I've finished it. So let's go over to my painting board and let me show you what I was talking about. Now this is a reference photograph which I took off the internet, and shows a good subject of the butterflies. Then I have 8x10 watercolor pad, and here I'm doing the sketch from that photograph. Here I'm taking a pencil, going over making some final adjustments of where the locations of the butterflies are, and then some of the background flowers, just to touch it up a little bit, make sure I'm ready to go. Then I'm mixing up some light colors here. I'm using, this is for the butterfly, I'm yellow lemon and yellow deep and orange to start off with. I'm using a silver brush round, designer round brush to paint the butterfly wings. Here I'm modifying the color. I'm adding in different values, different color, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of oranges, even add a touch of red. Some of the wing has a little darker value there, darker orange mixed in with that red. Get that color going. This is the main butterfly. This huge butterfly here at the bottom here. The bottom half of the painting is the main butterfly. It's the larger one that's also got more detail. Then there's another one with a silhouette butterfly, and all we see is a side. Again, using the same colors, oranges and yellows and a little touch of red to put in that the light color of the butterfly, enhancing a little bit more red at the top. Now there's a third butterfly back there. I'm going to dull that color down and put a little bit of green mixed in with that reddish area. It dulls down with that butterfly is way in the background. It's smaller, and this will show in the depth. It'll give an indication that's further away. It'll be a little bit fainter, less detail, less color, showing it's further away. I'll blot off some of the extra paint. Now I'm showing here that I'm going to begin working on the flowers. You see there's blue flowers there in the foreground, right behind the butterfly. So I'm going to mix up some violet with blue. I'm using peacock blue mixed in with opera to give me a nice violet mix. Now I'll move it over so you can see what I'm talking about here. The violet color mixed in with the opera mixed in with the peacock blue. Gives me a beautiful violet. It's a little bit too richy, a little too much red in that for that color. I'm thinking I'll put a little more blue. I have a test sheet of watercolor paper behind my painting. That's to test the color out before I put it on the actual painting itself. Testing out the colors. Get a little more blue in that. I want more blue into the color of that flower. Here I'm taking a look at the shape. Maybe testing the color right next to the photograph. Okay, now I'm going to go. Now I'm using the 1/2 inch flat brush, and I'm just putting in some of the shapes. I'm not really going to worry about a lot of detail. Here I'm just getting the likeness. Does it look like the flower? The shape. I'm varying the colors, changing the brush strokes to the side, use the edge of the brush, corner of the brush, changing the colors as I move along, adding in some darks and lights, and down to it. This is the main flower, the one that runs right behind the butterfly. So this is the main one that has the main interest. It'll be a little brighter, a little darker colors, a little more interest here. And the contrasting blue with that orange, I chose that blue to contrast with the orange of the butterfly is a good contrasting color. And I'm also I've sped up the film here a little bit to show, take a little less time for the going through the process here. Now remember, I'm putting in the colors, I'm putting in the flowers here as shapes, and I'm also, think of this as filling in the negative space of the painting. I'm going to get a variety of shapes, a variety of sizes for the positive shape of the blue, but then there's the negative shapes of the white paper, which is also part of the painting. So you want to have a variety of negative space along with the positive space that's being painted. So I'm breaking up that whites with the color of blues and purples or violets as negative space in the background. Now I'm going to go over, I'm going to mix some darker colors, and I'm going to prepare the dark colors on the butterfly. Here I'm mixing royal blue, and I'm going to mix it in with a little Russian crimson, and even a little bit of burnt sienna. Give me a nice dark color, a black. Mixing 3 colors will always give me a black, but that royal blue really does the job. Now I've tested on my test sheet. Oh, I like that. That's nice and dark. That's what I want, nice black color. And it's not all black, it's blue with mixed in with other colors. Variety. Now I shape the edge of the brush by rolling it in the paint and also rubbing it against the side of the palette. And then I start the shapes of the butterfly. These are, now I'll show a picture here up close so you can see. This is what I'm looking at as I paint. I'm looking at the photograph as a reference to give you an idea of that design, because this particular butterfly has a lot of design to it, a lot of figures, little lines. This is a monarch butterfly, one of my favorites. So the photograph there is what I'm looking at as I paint this. And I put the photograph up here to show you what I'm looking at. It's the photograph out of off the internet. The colors are not the same, that's fine. The shapes are not exactly the same, that's fine. But I just want a good reference photograph for a painting. And these dark edges are characteristic of the monarch. You get a dark edge border. It looks like you're outlining a butterfly, but that's the shape of the butterfly itself. And then these little design lines in the wing with the round brush with a sharp point, getting those darks in there. I'm putting the darks in because I'm not worried about it, because I'm going to go back and put highlights on top of that. So right now I'm filling in the dark areas. Again, I'm following the design from the photograph as carefully as I can, but just to give an indication of the shape. And I'll work on the other wing, the same thing, do an outline with the dark color, following the outline of the wing, which is a dark value. And I'll let this run like this in slow speed so you can see the detail that's involved here. And again, a nice round brush with a nice sharp point, and you get the color. Take your time, slowly. I have a plan, following the photograph to give me an idea of where to go, but then I use a little bit of artistic license here on places that I want to change here just slightly. I'm filling in the dark tips right now. And that's the main butterfly. Now I'll move up. Now the second butterfly I like because it's a silhouette. It's the side of the butterfly. And there I showed a picture again of the silhouette. So again, I'm following the photograph as a guide. It'll help me get the design that I want. And I chose the photograph, and this is what I use as my reference. A good reference will give you something, not exactly not to copy it line by line, but to give you an idea of the shape and the color and some of the changes that you want to do. I'm just getting the essence here. I'm going to follow the outline again with a dark color. This dark color will show up, but when I put the highlights in there, you'll see the other colors popping out also. In the shape of the wing with the dark color, I put the light color down first, and then over top of that put the dark color. Okay. Now this third butterfly is way off in the back. Small. It's a smaller one, less defined, less detail, but yet still enough indication that it's still the same kind of butterfly with the edges, a little bit of edges marked here or there, just to give the indication that it's the same kind. There's the three butterflies. Now I've got the half-inch brush. Now I'm going to put it in the background. Here's what I'm talking about: wetting and preparing the colors for the background. I'm going to fill in those white areas with that light blue. So the first thing I'll do is mix up some blue, and here I'm using cerulean blue with a lot of water. That'll give me a light value of blue. And I'm looking at the value, checking the value, adding more water, more pigment, whatever is required. Then I go over to my test sheet and try it out. Take a look at that. Now I'll actually bring the paint, the picture up here, and I'll actually look at that color right next to the photograph. Now it's still a little bit light, so I'm thinking now about putting in a little bit more color. Now this second step here, that what I do is I take the 3/4 inch brush, which is clean, and just put water in it, and I wet the paper, moisten it, and then I pick up the blue background color and paint over that moist area. And that way the paint is going to follow the water. That's the beautiful thing or property about watercolor, is you can control the flow of watercolor by controlling the amount of water and where you put the water. Here I'm putting the water in the negative space between the flowers. I'm adding moisture there, and then I'm adding the wet paint on top of that. And that paint will follow that water, and then it will build up that color in that area. Everything else is dry. The butterflies are dry, the flowers are dry, but that area between is dry paper. I'm putting water down first in that white area, and then I'm adding the background color on top. And this is a good way, a fast way to put it in the background, and also to keep your painting from getting messed up. You take your time. I've got it on fast speed here, so to make it go through the process a little faster. But essentially, take your time going through getting the paper wet, careful of the objects, and then adding the paint that you want. Here, re-wetting the paper again, and adding more background. Okay, now I'll go over with the smaller brush, the half-inch flat brush. Now what I'm doing now is cleaning up the areas, and I'm also eliminating or reducing some of the whites. The white spaces now are being filled in with that blue over top. And the other area is dry. I'm just very carefully brushing over it. Now check the photograph and against the painting. Need to make it a little bit darker, so I just add more water on top of that moist area. Just adding more paint, more pigment. Again, the watercolor will pick that up, adding more value to that area. There, you do that as many times as necessary. And now I'm eliminating some of the white spaces. Also, it's smoothing up, it's changing some of the edges a little bit, which is fine, because the background you don't want to have a lot of definition. The only definition I want is in the center with those butterflies. That's my main area. The rest is just background, not well defined. Now I decided to put a little color. I've added some green number 1 on my round brush, and I'm putting that into that negative space area behind the flowers. To give a little color change. I got too much blue and purple, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little green in there. If you look at the color wheel, blue, purple, and blue and green are all comparable. They're right next to each other. They're analogous, so they all go together very nicely. Blue, greens, and blue and purples go together very nicely. So it gives a little bit of green in there, showing the greenery with those purple flowers. Okay, now I'm going to introduce the Chinese white. Now this is where I'm going to do the highlights. The Chinese white is a watercolor paint, just like the other watercolors, except it's white. Now here I'm going to paint my highlights on top of those darks on the butterfly. So I'm going to take the round brush with a very sharp point, and I'm showing you here where I'm going to add the colors around the edges of the butterfly where those white dots are. I'll start out with just the tip of the brush in the white paint, and go over to the painting and start adding in those areas. Now right now I'm looking at the photograph, and I'll show that to you in a moment. I'm looking at the photograph as a reference to give me an idea of how many and what size and location of the white dots. Yeah, I'll give you a close-up now. There's a close-up of the painting, and I brought up the reference photograph to show you what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the photograph to give me an idea, give me a little guide, give me a good reference of where those areas will be highlighted. So I'm putting those dots, again, not following exactly what's there, but generally following the idea of those areas. That's what a reference photograph is, just to give you something to go by, to give you a little reference of what it looks like, and then use your artistic interpretation and paint it the way you like, the way you see it. I'm adding those dots along the edge of that black, which is a very nice highlight, because white against black is about as contrast as you can have, a dark against a light. That's characteristic of this particular butterfly, this monarch. And up here on that other butterfly, I'm going to add the white spots. Again, I'm using the reference photograph to give me a guide. I'm not following it religiously, but just using it as a reference. Give me an idea of where things would look like, could look like. And I'm adding my own interpretation of what I see to represent that particular subject. it was a good example of looking at a photograph and then how do I paint that? How do I apply that color? How do I apply that step? Maybe this will help you in the future. Now there's a overview now of a quick. Now I'm going to put a little more, just a few touch-up places I have. I'm going to add some more dark spots here on this main butterfly. Just cleaning up a little bit of the dark edges. Just a little detail on the big butterfly. Then I go up here, I'm going to put an antenna, a little antennae up here on this side butterfly. And maybe I'll add some feet, little legs and feet, so it shows that he's hanging on to that flower. Now a little more paint, and I'm going to add some stems to that flower. I may give it a little detail. A few little simple marks to show that there's a stem inside that flower. All different sizes, a little bit of different shape. Shows a little definition here of the particular flower. Now a little bit over here on the right side. Not as much as the center one. The center one is the main one. And then a little bit on the left, which is again not as well defined. Now I'll take up some color now. And I'll go into the flower itself and add some little dark areas to show a little definition. Not too much detail, but just enough to vary the values, show a little bit of detail of that flower, a little more interest. Remember, this center flower is the main flower, so it gets a little more attention, a little more definition. The side flower over here are just a few little spots, just to give a little attention here, and the other one just very minor. Now I'm cleaning up some of the white paper around the butterfly to make it look a little cleaner. There, now I've come up with a final painting. I've signed it. My demonstration painting, butterflies. I really enjoyed doing this, and I hope you enjoyed it also. And sign up. I want you to sign up to my channel on YouTube. You click the bell to be notified of future videos. And I'll see you soon again.